So next video in the series we're looking at club data, launch monitor data and what it means, how you should use it. So this one we're going to focus on attack angle. So attack angle is really, it's a measure of vertically how you're striking the ball, where the club is relative to its low point. Now that second part about relative to the low point is quite pertinent, but we'll come on to that a little bit later on. But the basics are angle of attack is a vertical measure. It's either minus, i.e. down, or plus, i.e. up. So again, left or right-handed, there's no interpretation required. It's just where are you striking the ball relative to where you bottom out. We're going to start out looking at an iron and what's important for an iron, and then we're going to look at driver because they are slightly different. So for irons, what are we looking for from an angle of attack number? Now ultimately, with irons, we want to strike the ball before the turf, because the other way around doesn't work very well. We've all hit those shots before. So what does that really mean? Well, we want the club travelling, catching ball then turf, so travelling on a downward angle of attack. What you tend to see a lot, anyone who catches the ground first, we tend to see a lot of swings where players trying to help the ball in the air, so that kind of lift there. And ultimately what that does is that puts your low point to the swing. If you think the swing is a hula hoop, it puts the low point back, which then means you're catching the ground first and then coming up into the back of the ball. So we've all seen those shots where someone weight falls back and that happens. Because we're trying to add loft and get the ball in the air. Because yes, getting the ball up in the air, getting height is a good thing, but not doing it that way. So the thing to remember with irons is irons all have a lot of loft on. So, you know, average 6 iron now is 27 degrees, and average 8 irons 34 to 36 degrees. So there's actually a heck of a lot of loft on the club head, which is designed to get the ball airborne. So actually, what gets an efficient contact is that slightly downward strike, which has two purposes. One, it makes sure you get the ball first rather than the ground. But you also generally get a little bit of forward shaft lean. So what that does is it produces a slightly lower loft, which in turn produces what we call a strong impact position. By that means it sends the ball forwards. And if you go the other way and you scoop at it and you don't get any shaft lean, you're adding loft. Yes, the ball goes up, but you're actually losing ball speed. So really good iron players tend to strike the ball with a downward strike and with that little bit of a shaft lean. Now there are technical reasons how you get it that way, and for that definitely go and see a coach, but just in terms of explaining why it's important to get that delivery position, I hope that helps a little bit. So we've all seen those swings where someone tries to add loft, you know, catches it, you know, picks up into the back of it, leans back and tries to help it in the air, hits the ground first, much like this. You know, weight goes back, and as the weight goes back, the low point of the swing also goes back, which is why you catch the ground first. So the key thing with, you know, angle of attack for an iron is we want it on the way down, because on the way down means that the lowest point of the swing is past the ball. That means you get the ball first. So if we can do that with that little bit of shaft lean, we get a good ball speed, we get a stronger flight, but we get better distance. And people term this compression. Ultimately, the ball compresses with every strike you make. So it's not a phrase that I particularly like, but it's one that's used a lot. But just to show what that strong impact position does when you get that shaft lean and you cover the ball and get the low point past the ball. So you can hear in the contact, it's a real kind of gutsy strike. You know, angle of attack 3 degrees down. Low point distance, I've put that up there because that shows it's 2.7 inches after impact. So the bottom of the swing is beyond the ball. And you know, launch angle there, 14.5 degrees, ball speed 122. Now, if I go the other way, and shallow the angle of attack out, deliver a little bit more loft, the ball will go higher. But it's also going to come off slower. So 2 degrees angle of attack, actually low point after the ball because I've still got ball first. I've added loft to get it airborne, so we've gone 5 degrees higher launch, dropped about 15 miles an hour ball speed. So it's a less efficient contact. You can still do it with a downward angle of attack, but you create a bit of volatility there. So with irons, the importance of angle of attack is that you're bottoming out your low points beyond the ball. You can do any number of things with the club face from there, but at least you're getting the ball first. If you get an upward angle of attack with an iron, then you're either going to create that bottom out early and catch the turf, or it's the thin top like that, which is a horrible shot. And again, that's generally, I mean, that one's 5.8 degrees up. That's generally when someone's trying to help the ball in the air. But remember, that's what you've got all this loft for. So irons, ball, turf, and that's definitely a winner. But we'll have a look at what it means for driver. So if you're enjoying this video on the data that we're using on the launch monitors, there's another one that we did on club path, so the horizontal measure. So check this one out, and check out also all the other videos on our channel that we recorded over the years. So I've now got driver in my hands. Now this is a different kettle of fish altogether with regard to angle of attack. And why is that? Well, one, the ball's on a tee. So with an iron, the ball's on the ground 90% of the time, unless you're on a par 3 where you tee it up. And even then it's teed up only a very, very small amount. So you've got to get down to the ball and you've got to cover it and get on top of it to get the club head into the bottom of the ball, but without catching the ground. With the driver, it's on a tee. So actually we can sweep it off. We're not trying to hit down on it as much. We're trying to send the ball up and out. Now, whilst I said previously with an iron we've got lots of loft on, so the ball's going to go up anyway, we get to a driver and we've now got 8, 9, 10, 12 degrees of loft. It's a third or a quarter of what we've got with an iron. So actually, that creates a lot of forward momentum, but we need to help the thing get in the air. So, I'll hit one, then we'll talk about the data. So with a driver, we're looking to sweep it and pick it off the tee. Ideally hitting it a little bit on the up. Now, irons are down, driver's up. I hear you cry, why is that? So, if this is a ball, if we're trying to get the ball airborne with not a lot of loft, the last thing you want to do is hit down on it because you're just piling it straight into the ground. It's not going to get any flight. And the only way to then get flight is to manipulate loft onto it to get it airborne. That kicks the head underneath. That creates a huge amount of spin. Spin's great with a short iron where you want to stop it, but with a driver we're trying to get distance. So all that does is adds height, adds backspin, lands and stops. Not great. So you don't have to hit up on it 4 or 5 degrees. So bear in mind with this, we talk about just not hitting down on it. With a driver, if you're hitting square into the back of the ball or up on it a little bit, then one, the reason for efficiency of flight is the mass in the head and the flight are more in line with one another. So the less differential between the mass in the head and the trajectory, the less spin. So the more energy is going through the line, the flight, and the stronger the ball speed, there's less differential of mass, so there's less backspin. It's a going, running out ball flight. So a lot of that is that we're helping it in the air a little bit, but everything's going through the line, the flight that you're trying to hit it on, rather than that way you've got a differentiation of mass to ball, flight, does that, create spin. So that's why with the driver, we're trying to hit it flat or slightly up rather than down. I'm going to head to the screen just to show a little bit of that data. So looking at these numbers and again, relating to one of the other bits of data that we talked about with irons. So angle of attack here, 2.5 degrees up. Now that isn't exaggerated. We're not trying to get 5 or 6 degrees. You know, if you achieve that much, then actually it makes keeping the club face online potentially a little bit harder. So actually for consistency, you know, a lot of the tour players, if they're trying to hit a fairway, will actually be 1 degree down. That doesn't stop you getting efficient contact. It might change the spin a little bit, but as long as it's not, you know, 3, 4 degrees down or 6 or 7 degrees up, there's actually quite a wide window of angle of attack you can hit within that can deliver a stable club face. But generally speaking, smaller numbers on angle of attack means you're at the bottom of the arc and there's less volatility to club face. But that one, 2.5 degrees up, so you know, nothing exaggerated. Where we can see that, you know, low point distance is 3 inches, B before the ball. So bottoming out before I get to the ball, hence able to catch it on the up just that little bit. Now if you think about it, you know, in terms of angle of attack terms, you know, 2.5 degrees, if that's flat, 2.5 degrees is not that much. 2.5 degrees is about that. It's really very little in terms of actual upward lift. So you haven't got to sit massively behind it and flip up on it. Because again, that takes the club face offline. We're only trying to catch it just after your low point. So prop, multicolored prop. So that's your low point. We're only trying to catch it there. We're not trying to catch it up here somewhere in the pink. We're trying to catch it just down here. So it's only just after you bottom out. So you haven't got to shift your swing that way to do it. It's just only a little bit. So that's really key to remember. It hasn't got to be exaggerated. And so for this particular shot, for me there, 156 ball speed, 12.5 degrees launch. Now I play a low loft driver, I deliver a bit of loft, but 12.5 degrees launch, that's carried 258 for that particular swing. I'm going to do one now where I hit down on it a little bit. I'm not going to try to shape it massively, but just deliver a slightly more of a squeeze delivery just to show how it changes those numbers. So going to just deliver, I'm not going to try and change shot shape, just trying to keep that nice and neutral like that last shot there, but just deliver a more of a shaft lean like we did with the irons, just to show you what it does to flight and carry. So keep myself nice and square, and I'm just going to kind of get a little bit more forward lean and get on top of it a bit more. I've skied it. That is actually one of the dangers of hitting down it too much. That's 3 degrees down, and I've caught that right at the top of the face. So actually, I'm just going to tee this down a little bit. But with that, we've lost 15 miles an hour ball speed. Still going straight, but it's not very satisfying. But the point I was really trying to make is that if I cover it and strike it just before I bottom out, so angle of attack there, 3 degrees down, ball speed 155, so we're only a mile an hour or so off what I did when I hit up on it. Launch angle 6 degrees, 5.8. That's taken 40 yards off the carry. So the key thing here, that's bottom out, low points 4 inches after impact. So reasonable shift, it's a 5 degree shift in angle of attack. So it's quite a strong change. But just shows if you shift that angle of attack, what you've then got to do to deliver some flight. If I were to then add a loft to deliver flight, then what we're getting is less efficient trajectory. We're going to get spin and we're going to get volatility because I've got to then manipulate the face to get that flight. Or you've got to go up in loft, which then again adds more spin. So angle of attack with driver will affect distance probably a little bit more than it will with irons, because that weight separated affects the flight efficiency a little bit more. But it's why a downward angle of attack is important with an iron to get ball turf, or ball first at the very least. But it's why a neutral to slightly upward angle of attack with a driver gives you more efficiency and more distance. So it doesn't have to be a totally different swing. It's just that one, I'm going to get that hula hoop again. One, you're catching, this isn't going to work for this video. One, you're catching the ball just before you bottom out. One, you're catching it just after you bottom out. So really all you're changing is a little bit of setup, making the same swing to catch it on the up with a driver, on the down with an iron. So we're only moving just either side of that low point. We're not shifting that far. If you start to shift majorly around your low point, then all that's going to happen is you're going to throw your balance off, you're going to throw your shot patterns off. And really what we see the tour players doing is, yes, they're very good at manipulating it, but they're not shifting it quite as far as you might think, because you don't have to. So again, a bit like with the shot shape side of things, it's worth finding out what your natural point is, what your kind of baseline is. So if you've got access to practice with some data, find out with an iron what your natural angle of attack is with a 6 iron and a 9 iron. And then with the driver, what your natural angle of attack is. And then think, okay, would it be better if it was slightly higher or slightly lower? And then just work out what feels, what you've got to do with your swing, or even better, find someone who can give you a bit of a lesson and work out what the feels are that you need to do to change that. But certainly understanding where you're at, and then therefore why you hit certain shot types, there can be huge value in doing that, to understanding your game and therefore getting the most out of it on a day-to-day basis.